Okay, Brian, I am not paying enough attention. I heard this was happening. The government was going to shut down again, and then it didn't. But I think we're now again 2 weeks away from the government potentially shutting down because MAGA Mike Johnson can't get his caucus together to actually govern. Like, we have played parts of this movie before, and I feel like it just happens over and over and over again. What's going on? I'm sorry, I really don't know.
Yeah. Do you ever really not want to do something? And so you sort of like put it on your GCal in the distant future and you're like, I'm going to deal with this then. Or you like snooze an email or something and you're like, today's not the day. I'm going to deal with this later.
Yeah, my taxi.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Congress is that with the budget, and they always just punt it down the line. We're like, "Oh, we're gonna deal with this in September. Like, it'll be totally different then. I'll be a different person." No, you're not. It's the same. And so now the government's gonna run out of money again, and Republicans who control the House cannot pass a bill, not a bipartisan bill, not even their own radical version of a bill to fund the government. Incapable. And so now the clock is ticking down and we have to come up with what is called a CR, a continuing resolution. That is going to be the path forward here.
And that's just like an extension. It's like, okay, it's like a stopgap bill, right?
Yep, it continues funding the government at the current levels because they're arguing over how to change them. And so rather than change them now, they're going to say, "Oh, we're just going to continue what we agreed on before, the current funding levels until blank date." And some people want that to be 2 months and they want to deal with it after the election. And some people want that to be like 4 to 6 months and they want to deal with it with a new administration, either the Harris or Trump administration in the new year. And which path you think is correct depends on who you think is going to win the November election. So it actually kind of says a lot about where Congress is at on what they think is going to happen in November. The other big sticking point for this fight is Republicans trying to use this as a political cudgel.
Kel Surprise.
Kel Surprise, they're trying to inject a non-issue into a very substantive and important piece of legislation by trying to attach what we would refer to as like a poison pill as something that they know cannot pass, particularly in the Senate, but just to send a message. And this time it's about non-citizen voting. And I'm literally using air quotes because
Because that's not a thing.
that's not a thing, but they are trying to undermine the results of the 2024 election. Again, not a great signal for their guy
Mm.
if they're already claiming that it's rigged, right? That's like not really a sign of confidence that you think your guy's going to win. But they're trying to undermine people's confidence in the election by claiming that there are all these non-citizens voting when there are not. And they're trying to force an amendment onto this completely unrelated piece of legislation in order to make more people talk about it, essentially.
That's disgusting. My thing, we know this. I rant about it. These people get paid. They get money in their bank every month from taxpayer dollars, and they cannot do their basic job. Like, imagine if this was like Amazon and Amazon was in their board and they couldn't figure out what the budget was. It's like everyone would get fired.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, aren't all 435 seats in Congress up?
Correct.
Vote, people, vote.
Only I know, yeah, only a portion of them are actually competitive because they've all
Been gerrymandered to the gods, basically.
right, gerrymandering and then also just sort of like the geographic sorting of our political tribes of the moment makes it a bit more difficult to get people out during a general election as well. But all of that to say, you're exactly right that many of them are incapable and uninterested in doing their basic jobs.
Uninterested in doing their jobs, and they have such good benefits. The federal government has amazing benefits. I was a federal employee for like 3 years of my life. Best benefits ever.
Yeah,
I'm just like, how is this possible that they simply cannot do their job? We saw it with the border bill.
right.
It should really chap a lot of asses.
To be clear, the normal version of this is that Democrats and Republicans cannot do their job by like working together to pass something and that there's like this gridlock problem. What we are experiencing right now is very different from that. This is sort of unprecedented in modern politics where just Republicans are unable to pass their own legislation, their own starting point for a negotiation where they don't need any Democratic votes. They just need to be like, this is where what we believe. This is a messaging bill. And they cannot pass that. They can't pass it out of committee. They can't pass it on the floor because they agree on nothing. The last Congress, controlled by Republicans, was the least productive Congress in over 100 years because they cannot agree on anything other than abortion bans. That's like the one thing that gets the most Republican co-sponsors on a bill. And we've talked about this before. That's why I'm confident they'll do something on abortion restrictions if they control all three needed components to pass it. This is a unique kind of paralysis because you can't negotiate with somebody who doesn't know what their own position on an issue is.
Yeah.
And that's MAGA Mike at this point in time. So I don't ultimately think there will be a government shutdown because of that ineptitude, right? Like if Republicans were all in lockstep and saying we have to do this one thing in order to fund the government and we won't vote for anything else, then like we might see either a shutdown or some movement. But as long as they're just like the this is fine meme where while the house is burning down, like that's not a valid negotiating tactic.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a very important distinction to make, that it's like Republican infighting. It's not two parties not agreeing. It's like one party imploding and causing disarray in our government.